Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for about the North Carolina Tar Heels. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive into North Carolina. It's kind of funny, right? So Arkansas gets the big win over Kentucky. I was, up until this weekend, calling Arkansas kind of the black cloud of college basketball, where it felt like every time we were talking about them, it was something negative. Well, it feels like that has been the case at North Carolina with Hubert Davis, where there just hasn't been a lot of positive buzz over the last couple weeks, okay? 13-10 right now overall. You're talking about a team that, what are they, 6-4 in the ACC, 6-5, something like that. They get destroyed by Duke. They lost at Wake Forest. They lost to Stanford at home. They struggled against Boston College. There's just not a lot of positive vibes, okay? Same time, we've talked about it, and we've talked about Hubert Davis's future, this, that, the other thing. I don't think today is the day to have the conversation about Hubert Davis's future, other than the fact that we did get some kind of interesting news. On Monday, Hubert Davis had his coaches show, and he kind of made some very interesting comments about the state of the program, about what needs to be fixed. And he did say something interesting that did catch a lot of people's attention during that coaches show. Basically talked about the state of things at North Carolina, and you could see the tweet there available via On3. They paraphrased it. On3 does a great job on social media getting every single piece of news available. But Hubert Davis said on his coaches show on Monday night, the old model for Carolina basketball just doesn't work. It's not sustainable. It has to build out because there's so many things in play with NIL, the transfer portal, agents, international players. You just need a bigger staff to be able to maintain things. You need a bigger staff so I can do what I'm supposed to be doing, and that's coaching. He continued, it's not on the tweet, but he said, I am going to increase the staff, and it's needed. I would have never thought in the 4 years that I took the job 4 years ago that 100% what is needed is a general manager. There's just so much stuff out there. So Hubert Davis basically insinuating, changes need to be made. We've been doing it one way. It is not working. And let me defend Hubert Davis on a few things. One, first of all, I think even he knows the standard is not being met at North Carolina. You get to a point where a lot of people, they're just at a job and, they're losing, but they don't really, I don't want to say they don't care, but they kind of give up. Hubert Davis loves Carolina. He wants what's best for Carolina, but I think even he knows that the standard is not being met. 13-10, going to miss the NCAA tournament, very likely for the second time in 3 years. That's not good enough. What I'll also defend Hubert Davis on is the simple fact that I do believe that North Carolina, they're kind of in the dark ages, right? They're a team, I'll be honest, I know this for a fact, and we talked about it with Caleb Wilson. They were very slow to embrace NIL. They were kind of one of those schools, and I remember talking about this years ago, but it felt like when NIL came in, there were kind of those two different types of schools. There were the schools that said, hey, NIL means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. Let's just get as much money as we can, give it to as many players as possible, and we'll worry about the consequences later. I would put Miami in that group. I don't believe that Texas A&M ever gave $1 million to each recruit, but you'd probably put Texas A&M in the recruit, the class of they were in on NIL pretty early. Tennessee, very much the same. There were a lot of other schools, though, that were very slow to NIL, that basically said the NCAA has rules. It can't be pay for play. It has to be true NIL, and we're not going to cross that line because we don't know what the consequences are. And they have been playing catch up from there. Kentucky with Mark Stoops and previously John Calipari, they were behind in NIL. I think they would say that, but they basically said, look, we don't want the NCAA to retroactively decide that you couldn't just blindly pay players and we get punished for it. I think Alabama with Greg Byrne was kind of in that boat. They were behind on NIL. They thought we had Nick Saban. We're good to go. Da-da-da-da, da-da-da. And then all of a sudden you're way behind. And then all of a sudden you make a coaching change and it's like, oh crap, we got to catch up. And we've seen the comments from Greg Byrne about we need your money because we're behind. And then there was North Carolina. And again, North Carolina, I don't even fully blame them. And let me explain why. Is because, first of all, you had in the early days of NIL, you did actually have a lot of guys that actually had true marketability, right? Remember, 2021, 2022 was the first year of NIL, the first year where players could make money off their name, image, likeness. Well, Carolina goes to the Final Four that year, plays for a national championship, and returns the whole team. And so Armando Bacot, I remember he was like on Outer Banks or one of those TV shows, and he had a million deals around town. I'm sure Caleb Love at the time, RJ Davis, I'm sure they were all taken care of in true NIL. Like, hey, show up here, we'll pay you, you'll take some pictures, you'll sign some autographs, whatever. So I don't blame North Carolina because I think there was a belief that they were falling, that they could get in trouble. And two, for the most part with basketball, like their players were being taken care of. And then I think the last year, and everybody you talk to in coaching points to the last portal cycle where it was just like, oh, this is way crazier than I thought. And I remember talking to somebody, I won't name the name or the school, but basically, I remember him basically saying like, dude, we had a budget. We thought it's what it was going to be. And it was a good budget, whatever it would have been, $4 or $5 million for the whole team in basketball. And he's like, we weren't even close. North Carolina was in good position. And then all of a sudden, everything changed last year. So like I said, let's start from here. As I said, I think people thought they had, I remember talking to an assistant coach, the budget was whatever. Let's just say $5 million. Let's make it nice and even. And they were like, we weren't even close once we actually got into the portal. And so I just bring it up because I don't blame North Carolina for falling behind. Somebody in the chat I saw said North Carolina rested on their laurels. Listen, we got a smart chat, and I appreciate you guys. You're 100% right. I think North Carolina was almost like Alabama football. We're Alabama football. We'll figure this out. People will take the discount to come to Alabama to play football, and I think it's the same with North Carolina. We're North Carolina. We got the baby blue, and we got the Jordan brand behind us, and we're good to go. And I think what they've realized over the last year or so, and I think it really changed like in the last month with the Caleb Wilson stuff, maybe not the last 2 months, is like, you can't just say to a kid, you need to take a discount to come here because kids aren't going to do it. And so I know they were behind. We've talked about it a million times. I mean, think about all of the things that have happened just in the last year with North Carolina recruiting. Missed out on basically every kid in the portal, Cliff Omiori. Jonas Adu. I can't remember everybody. They missed out. Obviously, AJ DeBonsa. We've talked about it a million times, but remember when the piece came out after AJ DeBonsa committed to BYU, and basically whoever runs his marketing stuff, AJ DeBonsa, they basically said like, yeah, this school was offering this much, that school was offering this much. North Carolina wasn't even close, and they tried to sell us on use the Jordan branding to brand yourself, and you can make money off the court by using North Carolina. And AJ DeBonsa is like, yeah, that's cool, but BYU's offering me this, and Kansas is offering me that. I'm just going to go where I could get the money up front. And so I think things had to change. And I give Hubert Davis credit for acknowledging it. This is a new world. Listen, I don't blame Carolina for being the way that they were, but we're in we're 2025 now. This thing ain't changing. I know schools will be able to pay players directly, but it doesn't change the fact that, I think Carolina's behind, and I think they got to catch up. I think it's kind of worth noting, and this was kind of an interesting comment by some people that I just saw. Duke was really kind of the first one to really go all in on the idea of having a general manager in college basketball. I mentioned the summer of 2022, North Carolina's coming off a national title game appearance where they lost to Kansas. But what was interesting about that was, if you remember, that was the summer that Jon Scheyer took over for Coach K. Coach K's final game was at the Final Four, lost to North Carolina. And the first thing that Jon Scheyer did, one of the first things, he hired college basketball's first general manager. Rachel Baker from Nike came in and basically handled the day-to-day of NIL. Basically, Jon Scheyer was like, these are the kids that we're recruiting. This is our budget. Find out what they want, and let's make it work. These are the 8 guys that we were focused on in the class of whatever it would have been, 2023, 2024. Figure out what their agents want, and let's see if we can do it or not, because I don't have time to do all of that. And so when I look at the situation in North Carolina, they've fallen behind. They just have, right? Duke's had a general manager for closing in on 3 years now. St. Bonaventure with Woj has a general manager. Villanova has hired a general manager, and they were a place that was never about NIL or pay for play. And they were just like, we got to do this or we're going to fall behind. And so I don't blame Hubert Davis. I give him credit. But I think this is also kind of like you got to get it done now, right? And I think that's my other big picture takeaway from this kind of quote and comment It sounds like the administration is going to bring him back and is going to give him the resources needed to have the highest level of success. I look at, a million different examples, right, of places where it's not going well. It's not whatever. It's not this. It's not that. And basically, a school will basically say, okay, you got this offseason to get it right. Villanova a few years ago had a big NIL budget. It got cut significantly because Kyle Neptune didn't win with it. You go on and on down the list. You can figure out who I'm talking about. But the point I'm trying to make is that it feels like, listen, basically, if North Carolina doesn't make the NCAA tournament, Hubert Davis is basically saying, look, I've got too much on my plate. I shouldn't be, trying to figure out NIL plus fundraising, plus game planning, plus the portal, plus who's entering, plus who's exiting, plus taking care of my own players on campus, plus travel, plus this, plus that. And so I give the Carolina administration credit because it sounds like they are willing to invest in the program the way that they need to. It's a different world. You need more people. I think, Carolina too, that staff has basically been in place for like 10 years. It was basically just they added Hubert Davis and then really the staff didn't change. And so I think all of those guys, Sean May, who else is on the staff? I'm blanking on everybody on the staff. They were like, oh, this is the way we've always done it. And this is the way we're going to keep doing it. And I think you need new ideas, fresh ideas, and new people, frankly, to take on all the additional responsibility. So on a positive, Hubert Davis is going to get it. I think on a negative for Carolina fans, it certainly sounds like he is going to come back for 2025, 2026. But I'll also say 2025, 2026, you got to get the job done, because if you don't, I don't think you're going to get 2026, 2027 to get it done. So I thought that was a very interesting piece of news that we got over the course of the day. And it'll be interesting to just see kind of what that means going forward for Carolina, because they will be hiring a GM, and it feels like they really do need it. They are struggling right now, and I don't think it's going to get better.